But Rudy, we attack Rudy way too much.
Yeah.
But one thing, Willie, you got to admit, the guy is consistent, right? No collusion, no collusion, no collusion.
Stays on it.
He stays. The guy like. What's this, Willie? What's this? No collusion. That's his middle name. They're going to put it on his tombstone.
I never said there was no collusion between the campaign or between people in the campaign.
Okay, Willie, his eyes bulged after he said that. My eyes just bulged as well.
Wait.
That was one you had to go back and listen to again. I saw it first on Twitter, then I had to go see it with my own eyes. Rudy Giuliani, who we're supposed to believe speaks for the President of the United States, right? He's his personal attorney. He goes on TV to speak for the President. The President said there was never any collusion. He said he never said that. What? That's the president's entire argument. No collusion, witch hunt, hoax. You can go back through. And by the way, there are times again and again and again where the president hasn't just said no collusion, but he said no collusion or from anyone on the campaign. So he's not just talking about himself. Rudy Giuliani, I don't know where he was before the hit last night, but a little bit too much truth perhaps came out.
Well, and Willie also, I mean, you have Mike Pence who said,
oh my gosh.
Mike, quote, we have defeated ISIS. Pence saying, why, we never even talked to anybody from Russia. We just talked to Americans about the campaign. And, well, you know, listen, let's just do this. Let's just get the pain over with. Here's Rudy Giuliani in full.
No collusion.
The amount of false reporting about this case is despicable.
Mr. Mayor, false reporting is saying that nobody in the campaign had any contacts with Russia. False reporting is saying that there has been no suggestion of any kind of collusion between the campaign and any Russians. Because now you have Paul Manafort giving poll data that winds up leading to this coincidence.
Well, you just misstated my position. I never said there was no collusion between the campaign or between people in the campaign.
Yes,
I
you
have no idea if I have not. I said the President of the United States. There is not a single bit of evidence the President of the United States committed the only crime you could commit here, conspired with the Russians to hack the DNC.
First of all, crime is not the bar of accountability for a president. It's about what you knew, what was right and what was wrong, and what did you deceive about. Those are going to be major considerations.
The president did not.
Well, he said nobody had any contact. Tons of people had contact. Nobody colluded. The guy running his campaign
he didn't say
was
nobody.
Working on an issue at the same time as the convention.
He said he didn't. He didn't say nobody. How would you know that nobody in your campaign?
He actually did say that, Rudy. He said nobody, and then he said, as far as I know.
He said it in a. Well, as far as he knows, that's true.
What time was this? Was this interview late at night?
Let's get at it, baby.
Yeah.
I mean, you know,
getting at the
Donald Trump himself during the transition
after hours
had said that Rudy had lost a step or two. People around Rudy had said during the transition when he wanted to be Secretary of State that he had lost a step or two. This looks like he's been cheating on his wind sprints for months. This looks like he's lost like 15 steps. And I don't know why they keep putting him out on TV, because Rudy Giuliani just told America and the world that Donald Trump's campaign colluded with Russia, full stop. Willie.
And I don't think this is the great argument he believes it is. I think he's trying to make a distinction between the president himself and his campaign. I think in Bob Mueller's eyes and in a prosecutor's eyes, there is no real distinction there. The campaign colluded or it didn't, Mike Barnicle. But I want to say one other thing. Yes, Rudy Giuliani late at night, we don't know what he's going to say. But we've also seen in the past him introducing arguments in moments like this. In other words, he talks to Donald Trump a lot. Maybe this is coming from somewhere else and not just from Rudy Giuliani sitting on TV.
Well, yeah, I'm sure he talks to Donald Trump a lot. I don't know whether Donald Trump is listening to Rudy Giuliani the way.
But in other words, maybe they're pushing this line, this argument, to Rudy Giuliani to put out into.
Well, I don't know how long that segment was on CNN with Rudy Giuliani last night. But if it were extended, if he were here for a half hour or 45 minutes, I could almost guarantee you that we could go directly from the set with a pair of handcuffs to the White House and put them on Donald Trump, because he is going to talk his client right into jail the way he's... Jonathan, it's incredible. I mean, the way Rudy Giuliani continues to carry on about this and misstate position after position after position.
First of all, Giuliani's sort of wide-eyed look there during the interview, as if he's expressing surprise about what Rudy Giuliani just said. This is another moment where it does seem like he is perhaps going off script and saying something he didn't believe. Now, there's no question. I'm sure we'll play video clip after video clip of him in the past suggesting that, of course, there was no collusion. There was no collusion at all, whether it was the campaign or the president himself with Russia. And he does seem to be, of course, changing that argument here. But Willie is right. There have been moments where Giuliani comes out on TV and says something that seems completely off script. It seems completely nutty. And then later we find out there was at least a little bit of strategy to it, including, let's remember, his first interview with Sean Hannity when he first introduced the idea of the Stormy Daniels payment, trying to get ahead of the idea that it was a campaign finance violation. So the context of his answer here was about Paul Manafort sharing polling data with one of his Russian friends, and that's a sort of explanation. But it is possible that this is Giuliani trying to get out ahead of some other piece of evidence, some other bad news story that they think is dropping, whether regarding Manafort or someone else, perhaps having some sort of communication with the Russians that they shouldn't.
By the way, speaking of bad news, this is breaking news from the Wall Street Journal. Michael Cohen hired an IT firm to rig early CNBC and Drudge polls in favor of Donald Trump. I'm sure we will hear more about that over the next couple hours. That's from the Wall Street Journal. But Katty Kay, going back to Rudy Giuliani, Rudy is privately talking about how Donald Trump is a terrible client to work for. The Mueller report is going to be devastating. Some are even saying that he's suggesting that Donald Trump may have to resign. This is not exactly, this is not exactly Michael and the Godfather. He seems to have absolutely no discipline at this point, and of course, that's damaging Donald Trump every time he goes out and talks.
And let's just put it out there again. It was a late-night television interview, so we don't know what happened beforehand. But every time Giuliani goes on television, you wonder whether the Mueller report doesn't get extended by another 2 or 3 weeks because they've got to go back over what you cannot just discount this, right? This is the president's personal lawyer. So if he goes on television and says, I'm not saying there wasn't collusion in the campaign, if you are doing your job correctly as Bob Mueller, you have to listen to that and go over it and wonder what is behind it. More than likely, it's possible that actually what's behind it is Paul Manafort being thrown under a bus, and this is Giuliani and potentially Trump with him saying, okay, we have to sacrifice Paul Manafort. That was the campaign side of it. It had absolutely nothing to do with the president. Let's draw the line there. Let's shift the line from the campaign in general to basically Paul Manafort, who may have been operating as a rogue operator, and the rest of the campaign and the president himself. And of course, there was no collusion with Donald Trump. And maybe that is the argument. Maybe Jonathan's right. Maybe there's some other piece of evidence they're trying to protect, or maybe this is the argument. If there is an argument, a strategy point that came out of that, and I'm not entirely convinced there was a strategy point at 9 o'clock at night from Giuliani on television, if there was one, it may be to protect Trump at the expense of Manafort.
Yeah, I mean, it's to point out there are other people who are on television at the same time as Rudy Giuliani.
Well, I think they
were completely coherent.
Well,
so
maybe
I don't know why.
The time of
like
night,
we're half joking, but we're half serious.
He had a heavy meal and was kind of
No, we're talking about whether or not he was.
It slows him down, slurs your words.
No,
I mean maybe that's. I know if I have Mika a big meal late at night before going on CNN.
It's just really, it's really hard because there's a couple of different people in the administration we actually cannot believe ever. I mean, this is, it's unprecedented.
All right. Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.